Egyptian temples had one overriding purpose: to keep the universe running. Open courtyards led to halls, halls to a sealed sanctuary. These were not public gathering spaces, but controlled environments, sacred machines where priests rehearsed the rhythms of the cosmos every day. From the outside, the walls looked silent and immovable. Inside, nothing was accidental. Temples were designed to mirror the structure of the universe. Bright, open courts represented the living world. Columned halls evoked the marsh where creation began. And the dark sanctuary stood for the primeval mound, the first land to rise from chaos. Moving through these spaces reenacted creation itself. Each room marking a stage in the world's beginning as priests retraced that sequence to keep the universe in balance. At dawn, the rituals began. The god statue was awakened, fed, clothed, and honored, always in the same exact order, reflecting the renewal of the world at sunrise. Priests unsealed the shrine, burned incense, applied sacred oils, wrapped the figure in fresh linens, and presented food and drink. Although the pharaoh was the high priest of every temple, these rites were performed by priests acting in his place. They spoke the offerings as if the king himself were present. "I offer this to you, O God, as the king has commanded." As the god was renewed, so was Egypt. Most Egyptians never witnessed these rituals. Only the highest priest reached the inner room. The temple kept the god's power active in the world. If the rituals failed, creation could fail with it. In a temple, architecture wasn't background. It told you exactly how close you were allowed to come to the god. And nowhere was this cosmic architecture more fully realized than at Karnak. Karnak is the largest religious site in ancient Egypt. Shaped over nearly 1,500 years, it began almost 4,000 years ago when the 12th dynasty pharaoh, Senusret I, built the first shrine to Amun. From that modest start, each pharaoh added something: another pylon, another hall, another shrine, until the complex stretched across 247 acres, enclosed by walls 39 feet high and 26 feet thick. Karnak was dedicated to Amun, who began as a local Theban deity, but rose to become the supreme god of Egypt, creator, king of the gods, and the invisible force behind all things. His very name means the hidden one, a reminder that the god's power was unseen, mysterious, and felt rather than witnessed. By the New Kingdom, Thebes, modern Luxor, had become Egypt's capital, the political and religious heart of the empire. Egypt was never isolated. It was an African civilization shaped by Nubia to the south and the Mediterranean world to the north, constantly absorbing and projecting influence. Amun's rising importance mirrored the rise of Thebes itself, and Karnak grew into a vast economic and political institution, controlling estates, workshops, and wealth across Egypt. Its most famous space is the Great Hypostyle Hall, a forest of 134 massive columns. The 12 central columns rise 75 feet high, their capitals 22 feet across, large enough for several people to stand inside. The stone roof was held aloft by perfectly cut blocks without a trace of cement. Karnak also introduced an important innovation: the clerestory, a raised upper tier of small windows that filtered thin beams of sunlight into the halls below. This architectural solution, raising the roof to admit light, would later appear in Roman basilicas and medieval churches. Karnak was also the starting point of the Opet Festival, one of Egypt's most important annual celebrations. Once a year, priests brought out Amun's statue, normally hidden deep within Karnak's sanctuary, and carried it along a sacred road nearly 2 miles long. This was the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a processional path lined with hundreds of guardian figures, marking the boundary between the human world and the divine. Crowds filled the streets as Amun passed by, but the most sacred rites unfolded inside Luxor's deepest chambers. Moving through Karnak meant moving through layers of history and layers of holiness. Each doorway narrowed access. Each hall intensified the sacred. Amun was the hidden one, and the deeper you went into the temple, the more hidden the god became. The universe remained stable because the god at its center was renewed continually. But Karnak was only half of the story. Down the river, another temple completed the cycle. Luxor Temple was closely linked to Karnak, but served a different purpose, renewing Amun's power. Its layout is more focused and linear. You enter a broad courtyard, pass into narrowing halls, and finally reach small, dark chambers at the back. This progression wasn't only architectural, it echoed the moment of creation, when the god's energy condensed into form. During the Opet festival, Amun's statue arrived here not just for procession, but for transformation. Inside Luxor's deepest rooms, priests performed the secret rites that revitalized the god, and with him, the divine authority of the pharaoh. Most people never saw these ceremonies, but everyone knew their meaning. Amun renewed himself so the world could continue. Luxor wasn't built to impress with size, it was built for one essential task: to restart creation year after year. Across the Nile, on the West Bank, the land of the dead, rose the mortuary temples, places where the king continued to receive offerings and take part in the sacred cycles that sustained Egypt. Hatshepsut, the first great female monarch, securely recorded in history, ruled Egypt as king for about 20 years. Her reign was peaceful, prosperous, and ambitious. She rebuilt temples, expanded trade, and undertook massive construction projects, including the tallest surviving ancient obelisk in the world at Karnak. Her closest advisor, the architect Senenmut, helped shape her vision. Under her patronage, he designed one of the most elegant structures in Egyptian history, her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri. Rising in 3 broad terraces carved directly into the cliffs, it is a masterpiece of symmetry, procession, and visual drama. Inside, beautifully carved reliefs depict her trading expedition to Punt, a wealthy kingdom on the Red Sea. These scenes include the earliest surviving representations of sub-Saharan Africans in Egyptian art, and the unusually shaped Queen of Punt, details the Egyptians used to emphasize the foreignness of the land. Hatshepsut appears throughout her temple in statues wearing the royal male Nemes headdress, the king's kilt, and even the false beard with strap. Many of these statues were later found smashed and scattered, fragments buried and reused in later construction. The most complete examples remained in Egypt, while others were reconstructed in museums using modern supports, allowing us to see both what survives and what was deliberately destroyed. This was not an attempt to disguise her gender. It reflected the visual language of kingship. The office of pharaoh had a symbolic vocabulary, and that vocabulary was masculine. A king knelt only before God, never a mortal. By adopting that imagery, Hatshepsut protected the authority and cosmic stability of the throne. And because she ruled for so long, her achievements could never be fully erased. In the generations that followed, officials attempted to diminish her memory, removing her name from inscriptions and altering or breaking some of her statues. This was a political act meant to simplify the royal past and reinforce a traditional male-coded vision of kingship. But it was not an immediate act of revenge. The campaign began decades after her death, likely during the reign of Thutmose III's son, Amenhotep II. And after 20 years of building, there were simply too many monuments and too much stone for her legacy to disappear. Hatshepsut stands as the first monumental tribute to a woman's achievements in world history and one of Egypt's most capable rulers. Carved directly into a sandstone cliff near Egypt's southern border, Abu Simbel, known in antiquity as the Temple of Ramses Meri-Amun, Ramses, beloved of Amun, is one of the most astonishing achievements of the New Kingdom. Ramses II wasn't building a temple here simply for worship, he was making a statement. Anyone entering Egypt from Nubia would be confronted with 4 colossal images of the king, each more than 60 feet high, showing Ramses in his roles as ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt, seated like mountains of royal power against the desert horizon. They formed a declaration carved in stone. Egypt is strong, and its king is divine. Carved low across the facade, near the bases of the colossal thrones and framing the approach to the entrance, are reliefs of the 9 bows, Egypt's traditional enemies. In Egyptian thought, the number 9 marked completeness, the highest number before a cycle began again. The structure of the universe itself was imagined as a group of 9 gods known as the Ennead, who embodied creation, order, and kingship. So the 9 bows stood for every foreign threat gathered into a single image of chaos brought under control. In Egyptian art, the bow became a visual shorthand for the armed outsider beyond the Nile. This was not one enemy subdued, but all chaos contained: Nubians, Hittites, Libyans, sea peoples, placed beneath the king's seat of power. Order quite literally rests upon domination. Clustered around the massive legs of the giant statues, smaller statues of Ramses' family, his wife Nefertari, his mother Mutui, and his sons and daughters. Their reduced scale reinforces the message: dynasty, lineage, and future exist within the gravitational pull of the king, anchored to him as the immovable center of Egypt's world. But Abu Simbel is more than a monumental facade. Above the entrance, carved into the living rock, appears Ra-Hurakti, a fusion of the sun god Ra and the falcon-headed god Horus, protector of the pharaoh. He holds the Ankh, the symbol of life, and the Waz scepter, the symbol of divine power, binding the rising sun to the authority of Ramses himself. Twice a year, on or near February 22nd and October 22nd, the rising sun shoots a beam of light 200 feet into the mountain, traveling through the hypostyle hall and into the dark inner sanctuary. There it illuminates 3 of the 4 statues: Ramses II as a god, Amun-Ra, the creator, and Ra-Hurakti, the rising sun. The 4th, Ptah, linked to darkness and the underworld, remains forever in shadow. These dates likely mark significant moments in Ramses II's reign, possibly his coronation or ascension, aligning the rising sun with the rise of the king himself. Ramses would rule for more than 6 decades, long enough that the cycles of the sun and the span of a human reign began to feel indistinguishable. The alignment was intentional, precise, and cosmically symbolic. Even today, people gather to watch the sun ignite the gods in light. At the very top of the facade, 22 squatting baboons lift their hands in adoration toward the sky. In Egyptian belief, the baboons' cry welcomed the dawn. Each sunrise, the temple itself appears to awaken, stone figures calling the sun into being. The smaller temple at Abu Simbel, dedicated to Hathor, the great goddess of love and protection, and to Nefertari, Ramses' great royal wife, is equally extraordinary. In Egyptian art, queens were almost never shown at the king's scale. Typically, they appeared half, sometimes 2/3 his height. Yet here, Nefertari stands nearly equal in height to Ramses himself. In a culture obsessed with hierarchy and proportion, this was a profound gesture, part devotion, part propaganda, part personal pride. What we see today, however, is not quite where the ancient Egyptians left it. In the 1960s, when construction of the Aswan High Dam threatened to drown the site under the rising waters of Lake Nasser, an international rescue project began. Engineers and archaeologists cut the temples into massive blocks, some weighing up to 30 tons, lifted them, and reassembled the entire complex over 200 feet higher and over 650 feet back from its original location. It took 4 years, more than 1,000 workers, and millions of dollars. The solar alignment was preserved within a day of its ancient precision. It remains one of the greatest feats of archaeological engineering ever attempted. Inside the Great Temple, painted reliefs depict the Battle of Kadesh, one of the largest chariot battles in the ancient world, Egypt's great clash with the Hittite Empire for control of Syria. Thousands of chariots thundered across the plain, and at one point, Ramses himself, caught in an ambush, reportedly charged into battle almost alone before reinforcements arrived. In his reliefs, he transforms this moment into a sweeping personal triumph. In reality, the battle was a stalemate. But Ramses' propaganda was so effective that for centuries the world believed he had won a decisive victory. Years later, Egypt and the Hittites signed the world's first recorded international peace treaty, a replica of which hangs today at the United Nations. With images carved in stone, Ramses turned confusion and near disaster into a chapter of royal glory. The halls are supported by colossal pillars carved with Ramses as Osiris, binding kingship, divinity, and eternity together in monumental form. One of the giant statues on the facade lies broken, its upper half collapsed in antiquity. The broken statue was left where it fell, a powerful reminder that even colossal kings were subject to time. Abu Simbel was lost to shifting sands for centuries until the early 1800s, when European explorers uncovered its entrance. What they found was a temple that wasn't built merely for the gods, but to project the power of the king across Egypt's southern border with Nubia, across time, and across the desert itself. Egyptian temples were more than stone. They were engines of creation, aligned with the sun, the Nile, and the gods. To move through their chambers was to move through the structure of the cosmos itself. The pharaoh's procession mirrored the sun's journey across the sky, and with every sunrise, every ritual, and every illuminated sanctuary, the universe renewed itself, and so did the civilization that trusted its temples to help keep the sky in place.